Pastor Mark Biltz here from Shaddai Ministries. Thank you again so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe and share. Also, please like this video, and we would love to hear your comments. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye. Let's go to Moses' Tabernacle. We're going to start there with the biblical calendar. I use the term biblical calendar. And it was about, according to the Gregorian calendar, it was about 1500 BC. Here, 3,500 years ago, God gave Israel a calendar and the priesthood. They had that. Clear back then. God knew how important the calendar was. How many of you know time is important to God? Some people don't think time is that important in the Bible. If that was the case, why did he give the birth year of every single person? And how long they reigned of every single person? Why did he give the timing of the feasts, the moeds? Time is very important to God. Okay, now, we've been a nation for a couple hundred years, right? Well, guess what? From Moses' tabernacle to Solomon's temple was about 550 years. Twice as long as America's been a nation, they had this calendar for 500 years operating a calendar and a priesthood. If you look at Exodus 12, 1 and 2, it says, the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron while they're still in Egypt. And he said, this month shall be to you the beginning of months. It'll be the first month of the year to you. Right here, God is giving them a calendar, okay, and it is based on the new moon. Everyone's familiar with that, right? Now, we know 3361 is our constant. Let's remember that. Okay, now, looky here. We got a bunch of ships. Guess what? The Mediterranean Sea, this was the world. They had ships like crazy that were going all through the Mediterranean, as well as down in the Red Sea below Moses' tabernacle there. Look at this verse. This is 1 Kings 9:26. King Solomon built a fleet of ships from at Ezion-Geber, which is near Eilat, on the shore of the Red Sea. How many of you have been to Eilat? I've been to Eilat. Okay, it's spelled a little differently in English, but I've been down there to the Red Sea, and it's right down there, and he had a fleet of ships there. Believe me, he and the other nations had ships going all over the Mediterranean Sea. And then look at this. Matter of fact, it says Hiram sent with the fleet his servants, seamen who were familiar with the sea, together with the servants of Solomon, and they went to Ophir and brought from their gold, 420 talents, and they brought it to King Solomon. Okay, so I want you to understand the Mediterranean Sea was full of trade and ships, even in the time of Solomon, 1000 BC. Okay? Now look at 1 Kings 10, 24 and 25. It says, the whole earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God put into his mind. Every one of them brought his present, articles of silver, gold, garments, myrrh, spices, horses, mules, and so much year by year. So this tells us that there was trading going on, and the whole earth was coming to Solomon's temple. Everybody saw that the Jews had a priesthood and had a calendar. You following me? Okay, so now look at 1 Chronicles 28, 11 through 13. We see David is the one who gave, Solomon didn't come up with the temple facts, David did. David gave Solomon, his son, the plan of the vestibule, the temple, the houses, the treasuries, the upper rooms, inner chambers, the room for the mercy seat, the plan of all that he had in mind for the courts of the house of the Lord, all the surrounding chambers, treasuries of the house of God, and the treasuries for dedicated gifts. And here we go. For the division of the priests, the Levites, and all the work of the service in the house of the Lord, for all the vessels for the service in the house of the Lord. So you got to understand, and they'd already gone through 500 years of doing a temple and having a calendar with Moses' tabernacle. Now they have a solid, unmovable, that's not going to move around like the tabernacle. In 950 BC, roughly, they have a temple. They have a calendar. They have priests. Okay, so now what happens? Here we go. Watch my little chart here. Who's ever heard of Romulus? Romulus founded Rome. That's why it's called Rome. He founded Rome in 753 BC. I can tell you right now, if he is of high political echelon, worth of money, which is why he's in charge. He's been to Solomon's temple. Okay? He's seen Solomon's temple. Everybody wants the nice, the presidential palace, if you want to call it. Well, guess what Romulus does? He goes, we need a calendar just like the Jews have. So he comes up with a calendar, and it's going to be based on the sun. We don't want to be like them Jews. They're basing it on the moon and the sun. We're just going to pick the sun. So let me explain to you historically what happened. We see 753 BC is the main starting point for the calendar we use now. But guess what? Romulus wasn't real bright. He said there's only 10 months, not 12 months in a year. And these were the name of the months: Martius, Aprilis, Maius, Junius, Quintilis, Sextilis, September, October, November, December. Do you notice Quintilis is for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Decalogue, December, 10. So there are only 10 months in the year, and that's why December was the 10th month. Okay, so here's the thing. Aprilis, let me start with Martius. Let me see. The first month, Martius, he named after his own father, Mars, the god of war. His dad was called Mars because he was the god of war. So he named Martius. Okay, Aprilis in Latin means opening. It's when like the flowers open in April. Maius was the goddess of fertility. Junius was the goddess of love and marriage. This is why most marriages take place in June today. Okay, so those first months were all after gods, basically, and then the next months were named after Latin words for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th month. Okay, does everybody get that? I want to make sure I don't go on. All right. Well, guess who reigned Rome after Romulus? A famous name everybody heard of, I'm sure. Numa Pompilius. He started reigning in 715 BC, and he said Romulus was nuts. There's supposed to be 12 months. So it was in 17 BCE that he added 2 months. He added the January and the February, and he put them, though, at the end of the year. So now, okay, February is the last month. This is the 12th month of the year. And so the year began in March, not in January, according to him. All right, now, the thing about Numa Pompilius in 715, not only did he say he was crazy only having 10 months, here he is. He had a calendar, but he decided we need a priesthood. Solomon has a priesthood and a calendar. We need a priesthood and a calendar. So in that year, in 715, he created the temple of Vesta. And here is a picture of that temple that was in Rome in 715 BC. He wanted priests too, because the Jews had them, and the calendar, and who he have a high priest. Someone's in charge, the big boss, and I want to be the big boss. So what he does, this is where you have the Vestal Virgins come from. The Flamines were high priests over 15 different cult groups. The Vestal Virgins took care of the sacred flame in the temple of Vesta. Then they had the Salii. They were the dancing, jumping priests of Mars. Then you had the Thetiales, which were priests acting as envoys to avoid wars. And finally, in 715 BC, they created the Pontiff, led by Pontifex Maximus, which means the king. Responsible for the most important religious decisions. Now, guess what? Come 45 BC, we now have Pontifex Maximus Julius Caesar. And he wants to create the Julian calendar. And he moves January and February over to the beginning. So the 10th month now becomes the 12th month. And the 9th month becomes the 11th month. And so everything gets readjusted. But this is where we came up pretty much with our calendar, but what happens, he decides, let me go over here. When he creates his calendar in what we call 45 BC, how many of you know he didn't know it was 45 years before Christ? That's not the calendar he was on, okay? So in 45 BC, he adjusts the calendar, all right, and he says, this year is actually the 708th AUC, which stands for Ab Urbe Condita, or the founding of Rome. So in 45 BC, you can do the math on the charts there. You will see when Rome founded to Julius Caesar was 708 years. So he begins, his first year is the 708th year from the founding of Rome. Okay? And then what does he do? He says, forget Quintilis, we're going to call this July after me, Julius Caesar. Well, then what happens? In 8 BCE comes Caesar Augustus, and he says, well, let's get rid of Sextilis, and we'll call it August. Okay, so this is how our calendar is developing if we go back to about 8 BC.